I've often talked on this channel about the supply and demand issues when it comes to racism. The idea is that there's a lot of people in the market for white people being racist to black people, but there are just not enough instances to cover this, to justify this, and make your life all about it. But the thing is, that doesn't stop people on the internet.com from doing so. A perfect example of this is TYT's latest contributor, the host of Indisputable, Rashad Ritchie. And this guy basically based his whole channel on incidents of white people being racist to black people. But the thing is, these incidents aren't that common. So oftentimes what you see is petty arguments between white people and black people, oftentimes unreported by Rashad. These arguments are started by the black person in the engagement, and him making up a whole thing, referencing slavery, crying and saying, wow, look at all this evil white racism. I can't cover crimes because the crimes are wildly disproportionate in the other direction, so let me talk about these petty arguments. But the other thing that this guy often pushes are straight up hoaxes, lies, fake news, and propaganda. And the incident that we're going to talk about today involves all of those things, except the target of this racist's ire is 12-year-old white kids in the Little League World Series. I mean, just look at the title of this video. It says, "Shocking Racism Broadcast Live During the Little League World Series." Now, by the end of this video, by the end of this podcast, if you're listening on Spotify and or on iTunes, you will know that not only is this not a racist incident, not only was there no malice by anybody except for the race hustlers that try to turn this into a Covington 2.0, it's actually one of the most wholesome coming together kind of stories that you probably could have gotten out of the Little League World Series. However, it was ruined because people like Rashad cannot stop looking at the differences between people's skin colors. But before we get into that, we do have a sponsor. I'm going to toss it to the sponsor, long-term sponsor of the channel, and then we'll talk about this on the other side. Bank of America just lowered their forecast for the S&P 500 by year's end by 900 points to 3,600. The reason why? They say we're going into a recession. They say that inflation is a huge problem. Now, I know a lot of you might be invested in the market and might be concerned about your assets going forward. This is one of the reasons why I've always recommended diversifying with precious metals. And luckily for you, Consumer Affairs has just rated Noble Gold the best gold company on the market. This is due to their stellar customer service and their absolutely wonderful product. And guess what? If you sign up with Noble Gold quickly, you will be gifted a 1/10 of an ounce American Eagle gold proof coin as a gift for your 401k rollover or for your qualifying IRA purchase. To learn more, call them at 877-646-5347 or visit them at noblegoldinvestments.com. You won't have to deal with any call centers, any scripted conversations, just experts trying to help you. Again, that is 877-646-5347 or noblegoldinvestments.com. Secure your future today. So the lower third of this graphic says Little Leaguer's head was covered in cotton balls, which gives you the impression that the white kids on this team, for some reason, bought cotton balls to the game for the sole purpose of covering this poor black little kid's head with cotton. Now, just so you guys know, this is not the case. Just so you guys know, even though Rashad is not going to tell you throughout the course of the video, this was voluntary and it was actually done for a wholesome reason. But that's not going to stop Rashad from attacking white 12-year-olds due to the fact that he has hatred for white people as a group and he can't control himself.
Let's just put the picture up full mass here. I would try to explain as much as I can about this, but still a lot of unanswered questions. A Little League World Series player's head was covered in cotton during a game on Sunday night. So this went out on social media. Obviously, many were outraged considering the black player didn't appear to be laughing about it.
Now, I'm sure you guys have heard the phrase that a picture is worth 1,000 words, but here's the thing. Pictures actually lie. They're not trustworthy. And this is a screenshot of a video that in the overall context of the video would have been quite illuminating. But he talks about how people are outraged and how this kid appears to not be having a good time. Keep that in mind. Notice that he said that. Write that down. Jot it down in your notes because we're going to address that later.
So this went out on social media. Obviously, many were outraged considering the black player didn't appear to be laughing about it. Now, the kids around him, they are in fact white, okay? When you look at the full video, you see that clearly.
So in case you weren't sure about the angle that this was going from the title, from him showing the image, from him emphasizing cotton balls, cotton being put on this person's head. He tells you that the kids around him that were smiling, that were having a good time, were in fact white. So obviously his teammates, the people that he's played with in order to get all the way to the Little League World Series, are also evil white racists that decided to use their evil white racism against him on live television by putting cotton on his head. Now, I just want to point out one of the most obvious things in the world, that this is a brain damage level association from Rashad Richey, because what he's basically doing is saying, oh, black hair is a thing, cotton is a thing, those are kind of connected to racism sometimes, therefore, if this guy has cotton on his head, it must be evil white racism. This is like saying that if you go to a diner, there's usually ketchup on the table and you order coffee, therefore, every time you see ketchup being squirted inside a cup of coffee, you must be in a diner. That's not true, it's not remotely true. You have to be an absolute buffoon or a professional race hustler, a professional race grifter to see a situation like this and immediately assume the worst and then demand money from your audience so that you can fight racism, because we all know that in order to fight these 12-year-old evil white racists, you have to subscribe to Rashad's channel, give him money, support him on Patreon. Please help the race hustler, because he's really the person that needs to be in charge of saving the world from the evil white racism. By the way, this guy's a professor. He teaches students and he has this level of racial hatred in his heart.
The incident happened in the 8th inning of the Red Sox versus Orioles Little League Classic game in Pennsylvania, when several members of the Davenport, Iowa Little League team, who are white, took stuffing out of giveaway toys and placed it on a black teammate's head.
Now again, notice that Rashad is leaning heavily into the teammates who were white, they were white people did this and put it on a black teammate's head. So these evil white racists found stuffing in a doll and they decided to put it on this black kid's head. Obviously, due to evil white racism, aren't white people racist? Somebody go after these 12-year-olds, because these 12-year-olds are obviously evil white racists. I mean, again, you have to be so mentally unfit for the world to see the world in this way. But considering these are the same people who were so unhinged, so crazy at the idea that Nick Sandman, a 16-year-old kid, would smile and stand silently while a Native American bashed a drum in front of his face, and they started threatening the school, started threatening Sandman, started calling culinary institutions to tell them not to admit this kid because they saw him looking at a Native American, daring to smile as a guy banged a drum in front of his face, as evil white racism and the rebirth of colonialism. Yeah, it kind of makes sense that they would be mad about this. It kind of makes sense that Rashad, who profits off of selling you racial division, who profits off of pushing racial hatred, would jump on board with this, because this is the exact kind of story that he's totally in for.
So the Little League World Series, they did submit a quote. Spokesperson said, after speaking with the team, as well as reviewing photos, multiple players on the Midwest region team were taking part in this while enjoying the game. As only one player appeared on the broadcast, Little League International understands that the actions could be perceived as racially insensitive. Okay, we get that statement.
So, of course, Rashad reads the biggest nothing statement from the Little League World Series. And by the way, the people at the Little League World Series should not have said, we understand why this would be viewed as racially insensitive. What they should have done was come out strong, defended the kids against this racist attack from people like Rashad Richey, because what he's doing is taking the ambiguous nature of this specific statement and using that to pontificate and make up additional things about how the parents are evil white racists, the students are evil white racists, I'm sorry, not students, the kids who are playing the Little League World Series are evil white racists, and this is all based on the idea that evil white racism is so much common everywhere that even a black teammate is not protected from the evil white racism. Aren't white people so racist and evil? These 12-year-olds are terrible. Let me tell you the name of the team that these 12-year-olds can play on so that you can get angry and lash out and threaten them, which of course was happening in response to this nothing incident.
All right, I don't know what adult supervision allowed this to happen. Obviously, adults are there. It's a Little League game. They got coaches, they got parents, they have support staff. I played baseball. They allowed this to happen. So that's one failure.
So then Rayshad says, oh my God, the support staff, all the people that are there at the game should have stopped this from happening. They should have ended it in the moment. The idea that they would allow this happen is a failure. And now he's going to pivot to calling the parents, without any evidence, evil white racists.
Number two, maybe one of the kids thought this would be funny because of what they've learned from their own home.
Again, it is not a common racist thing to put the stuffing from stuffed animals on a black kid's head. This is not something you would have learned from your own home or anything like that, and the kid was actively participating and enjoying himself. But again, we'll get into that later. We'll talk about it in just one moment. I just want Rayshad to dig himself a bigger hole.
And number three, the reason we are aware of this is because the cameraman or camerawoman decided to focus in on this while it was happening at the end of the game. So we are made aware of it on live television because they made a conscious decision to say, hey, let's show them picking cotton off of this black child's head.
So now the claim has moved on, and again, it just shows you how garbled and incoherent this man actually is. To the white kids, we're picking the cotton out of the black kid's head. So now the issue is white people picking cotton, because I could say cotton and then picking and then associate that with slavery and talk about black kids and say, wow, these people are reinstituting slavery. Remember all those times that white people picked cotton during slavery times off the head of black people? Like, what are you talking about? What is wrong with you? Are you this demented? The answer is yes, or maybe he knows this is not a real story. He knows this is not a real thing. He's pushing this hoax in order to profit off of this hoax.
So I'm not sure why that decision was made. There has been no response from the camera person who made the decision, but obviously the insensitivities are well noted here.
Who the hell cares why the cameraman cut to this happening in the crowd? The idea that we need a statement from this person just shows you how irrational and insane Rayshad actually is. He's like, we don't have a statement from the cameraman that filmed this incident that we're taking out of context, that I'm race grifting off of right now, but we will seek out that statement right now in this moment, and we will wait for comment, because this is the most important thing. This is indisputable with Rayshad Richey. This is indisputable with the non-white version of Sean King.
The racial bias, staggering. Adrian, thoughts on this?
The racial bias is staggering, and now he's going to cut to another person who's going to complain and whine and cry about this as if this was actually a racist situation or anything like that.
You know, it seemed that the Little League wanted to pretend like this wasn't anything significant and that it was unintentional, but they understand that it could be a bad look. The reality is that this is a black child surrounded by white children trying to put cotton on the child's head. And even if they weren't doing that specifically with the thought of a black child picking cotton, the fact is that they're targeting him in some way that isolates him.
Even if they didn't intend to be racist, they're targeting him in some way that isolates him, and he's not having a good time. It's such a sad thing. They're targeting the black kid. They're saying that this black kid is so inherently different from him just by targeting him in this way that was just targeted to the black kid.
Putting this white stuff on his hair, that's almost also creating this seeming white identity, cloaking him in it. The fact that he is alone targeted, it just really says a lot about the environment there. And as you've noted, what these children are exposed to at home, what their belief structure has already been established to be. But we can't ignore the fact that this is what racism looks like. And this is a product of it.
So for some reason, this buffoon thinks that making his hair white, according to her, this is what they might have been doing, is trying to whitewash his identity, because now only white people can have white hair, I guess. And then again, she doubles down on the idea that he was targeted and isolated, and it was he alone that was targeted and isolated.
That's right. We can call it unconscious bias, systemic racism, whatever you want to call it. The impact is the same. All right, on the other side of that, a young kid now feels the adverse impact of racial bias.
So according to Rayshad, this is unconscious racism, this is systemic bias, and this is the impact of racism in our society. Gosh, it is so hard for these evil white racists. But here's the thing. There's actually more video to the situation. There's more images that are available. And everything that Rayshad said was completely wrong. Everything that this other woman said was completely false. And this can be disproven by just showing this image of the black kid and this other white kid posing together with the white mohawk on his head. And the reason I say mohawk is because what was actually going on in this moment was appreciation of another player who actually wore a white mohawk, a picture that these kids were a fan of. And the first thing that happened was this white kid had the white mohawk made so that he could honor this player, who, by the way, is a Hawaiian player. And then the black kid wanted to participate in that, so he had them put on the mohawk for him. So the idea that they targeted this black kid and they isolated him from the rest of the team is 100% false, 100% fake. And in fact, the only people who went out of their way to start a national campaign to tell this 12-year-old black kid that he is not the same as the other members of his team, that he is different, that he doesn't belong there, were people like Rayshad, were people like this other woman, were people like those on the left who pushed this race hoax in order to attack 12-year-old white kids because they thought that was a good way to spend their Sunday. They thought that was a good way to spend their time. They're the ones who divided this kid. They're the ones who isolated this kid. And this kid's mother actually released a statement telling people to shut up, stop being ridiculous. What the hell are you talking about? Why are you using my kid for this racial agenda? Why are you trying to separate him from his teammates in order to make your political point? All you're doing is showing on a national level that you don't believe that my 12-year-old kid is the exact same as these other kids. On top of that, remember, these kids were honoring a Hawaiian player. So what this actually was people, black and white, since we're going to focus on race because people like Rayshad want to make money accusing 12-year-olds of being racist, appreciating a Hawaiian player. Therefore, this would be an example of cultures coming together and being a fan of another, and baseball being the uniting force in that fandom. But no, you can't focus on that. You can't talk about that. You can't enjoy that. You can't see this very wholesome moment for what it is. You have to stoke racial division. And to Rayshad's point about this kid not enjoying himself, this just goes to show you how lazy he is, or again, how much he's intentionally lying, because there are other videos of this kid smiling once he has his mohawk made.
The black player didn't appear to be laughing about it. The black player didn't appear to be laughing about it.
Because this wasn't about racism, this was about honoring another person. It was something that the teammates were participating in together. Every aspect of the story pushed by Indisputable is 100% false, and not only did they make this into a YouTube video, which has not been taken down after it's been debunked, after it has been shown as a racial hoax, after Rayshad has been proven to be a liar who would rather target white 12-year-olds and send harassment their way and portray them as racist for money than do any little bit of fact-checking. But he actually made a short of it so you could see it in short form, so that way you can really hate these 12-year-old kids. That way you could really hate the parents. That way you could really call in the threats. That way you can distract these kids from being able to play their game, which they have upcoming, because they're only 3 wins away from the American final of the Little League World Series. But scumbags like Rayshad have to make it about race. Scumbags like Rayshad need to make money, so they drive up hysteria around this hoax, make a Covington 2.0, and never retract after the fact. The kids, by the way, should go out of their way to sue people like Rayshad. They should shame him in public court. We should know that this guy knew for a fact that he was lying, or we should at least know that this buffoon doesn't know anything, doesn't fact check anything. He's absolutely lazy and he's embarrassing. Imagine being this low level of scum that you get joy and you profit off of dividing a Little League team because that's what your audience wants. That's what the hateful, disgusting people that follow you want to see. That's Rayshad Richey. In a nutshell, that's the Young Turks, because this is a part of the TYT network, and they should be ashamed of themselves. But hey, those are just my thoughts, so let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you liked the video, show me by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on all my social media, support me via the support links in the description box of this video. This has been me talking about Covington 2.0. Till next time.